Okay, whoever this is, I need you to hear me, because the first thing coming through is almost funny. This man thinks you are beautiful, but I don't think you fully understand the level of beautiful we're talking about. And look at the first card you gave me, the star. That is such a perfect symbolic image for this, because the star is about visibility, hope, inspiration, and that feeling of seeing something you cannot ignore. So psychologically, this is giving me somebody who looks at you and immediately notices you, not because you're trying too hard. Actually, I'm getting the opposite. It may be the moments when you're not performing, not posing, not fixing your hair, not checking whether you look good. That is when this person seems the most affected. And this is interesting because I feel like there's one feature you may be critical of that he genuinely loves. For some of you, it's your body shape. For others, it's your smile, your nose, your natural hair, your skin, the way your eyes change when you laugh. Something you look at and think, I wish this were different. And he's looking at the exact same thing thinking, why would she ever change that? But wait, because that is not what leaves him speechless. That's what caught his attention. What leaves him speechless is what happened after he noticed you. Because I'm seeing someone who expected you to simply be attractive, and then you spoke. Or you laughed, or you said something clever. Maybe you handled a situation with confidence. Maybe he watched how you treated another person. And suddenly this went from, wow, she's gorgeous, to, hold on, who is she? That shift matters. And with the star sitting here, there's this sense that he may idealize you a little. Not in a fantasy prediction way, symbolically. It feels like you represent something he has been hoping to find in a person. Beauty mixed with individuality. And I'm telling you right now, there is something very specific about the way he watches you when he thinks you're not paying attention. Because the next thing I'm getting is that he has memorized a tiny detail about you that you probably don't even realize he noticed. And when we get into what that detail is, it explains why someone who normally knows what to say suddenly seems completely thrown off around you. And look at what you gave me next, the Two of Pentacles. Okay, that makes so much sense. Because this card is literally about movement, rhythm, little adjustments, the things you do almost automatically without thinking about them. So the detail he has memorized may not even be a physical feature, it could be a mannerism. For some of you, it's the way you look down, right before you smile. Or you do this little thing with your hair when you're concentrating. Maybe your voice gets slightly faster when you're excited about something, and then you catch yourself and laugh. There's something you do when you're comfortable that you probably have no idea you're doing. And he knows it. That's the part I want you to understand. Because anybody can notice that somebody is attractive. You can walk into a room, look at someone for 3 seconds, and think, okay, she's beautiful. But you do not memorize somebody's tiny expressions in 3 seconds. You don't notice that she makes a certain face when she's trying not to laugh. You don't notice that she tilts her head a particular way when she's listening. You don't notice the difference between her polite smile and the smile she gives when something genuinely catches her off guard. You notice those things because you've been paying attention. And with this Two of Pentacles, symbolically, I almost feel like he has started anticipating it, like he knows what's coming. He says something and there's a part of him waiting for that expression. Or somebody else says something funny, and before he even fully reacts, he looks at you because he wants to see how you react. Do you see the difference? This is not just somebody looking at you. This is somebody studying your rhythm. And weirdly, I don't even think the version of you he likes the most is the version you intentionally present. It's the version that slips out when you forget yourself for a second, when you're distracted, when you're laughing too hard. When you're focused on something else, and you're not managing how you're coming across, that seems to be the woman he cannot stop watching. And this is where I have a question, because psychologically something does not quite add up. If he has watched you enough to know these tiny things, if he is this fascinated, if being around you is something he clearly enjoys, then why does he seem less confident the closer he gets to you? Because normally familiarity makes somebody relax. With you, I'm getting the exact opposite. the more he notices, the more careful he becomes, and I think we need to talk about why. And then you give me the Magician reversed. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Because symbolically, the Magician upright is somebody who knows what to do with what they have. They know how to communicate. They know how to create an impression. There's confidence, initiative, that feeling of, okay, I've got this. Reversed? Suddenly all of those tools are still there, but the person cannot seem to use them properly. And I feel like that's him around you. This may be somebody who is normally pretty good at talking. Maybe he's funny. Maybe he can flirt. Maybe he can walk into other situations without analysing every sentence before it leaves his mouth. But with you, suddenly he's editing himself. He thinks of something clever to say, and then says, "So, how's your day?" He wants to compliment you, and then decides it might be too obvious. He catches your eye, holds it for a second, and then immediately finds something very interesting on the other side of the room. And no, I'm not saying every awkward person secretly has feelings for you. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about this specific pattern where somebody seems perfectly capable until the interaction actually matters to them. Because casual attraction is easy. If somebody thinks, she's cute, there's not much at stake. But when the thought becomes, I actually care what she thinks of me. Oh, now every word feels like it counts, and I think there's another layer here. You may not seem particularly easy to impress, not because you're cold, not because you think you're better than anybody. It's more like you have your own internal world. You're not sitting there waiting for somebody to convince you that you're interesting. You're not automatically impressed just because somebody knows how to turn on the charm. And I think he feels that. So the usual tricks don't work on him psychologically because he knows they may not work on you. Actually, I get the feeling that at first he tried to make this simpler in his own mind, like, okay, I'm attracted to her, that's all this is. Because physical attraction, he understands. That's manageable. But then something happened. You did something that made him stop seeing you as just the beautiful woman he was drawn to, and start respecting you. And once respect entered the picture, this became much harder for him to keep casual. Because whatever you did, I don't think you even realised he was watching. And look at what you gave me, the Page of Wands reversed. That is interesting, because symbolically, the Page of Wands is usually curious, expressive, excited, quick to move toward whatever catches their attention. But reversed, there can be this hesitation, this moment where enthusiasm runs into self-consciousness, and I think that happened after he saw something about your character. For some of you, you handled a situation differently than he expected. Maybe somebody crossed a line, and you set a boundary without making a whole performance out of it. You didn't yell. You didn't need everybody watching to agree with you. You just knew where you stood. For others, I feel like he heard you say something incredibly perceptive. Not necessarily some huge, profound statement. Maybe everyone else was looking at a situation one way, and you quietly noticed what was actually going on. And he had this moment of, oh, she picks up on things, or maybe, and this feels strong for somebody, you were kind to someone when there was absolutely nothing for you to gain from being kind. That matters. Because beautiful people get watched all the time. But character gets revealed when somebody thinks nobody important is watching, and he was watching. But here is the interesting part. I don't think you were trying to impress him when this happened. That may actually be why it affected him so much. Maybe you laughed at yourself when something went wrong instead of getting embarrassed. Maybe you admitted, I actually don't know, without pretending you did. Maybe somebody was giving you attention, and instead of soaking it up because you could, you just walked away from it. Something very small told him. There is more going on here than I thought, and that changes the psychology completely. Because attraction asks, do I want her? Respect asks a much more uncomfortable question. What does she see when she looks at me? You see that. Now he's not only evaluating you, he's evaluating himself around you. How did that sound? Did she notice I was nervous? Does she think I'm genuine? Can she tell when I'm trying too hard? And suddenly that Page of Wands confidence gets turned upside down because he actually cares about the answer. But there's something else here. Something about you that I don't think you fully realise you project. And I think he sees it very clearly. It's not your beauty, it's not your clothes, it's not whether other people think you're impressive. It's a quality that makes him think, on some level, I don't know if I'm in her league. And the strange part? I'm not sure you would ever guess what it is. And then you give me the Five of Swords reversed. Okay, that actually explains it. Because symbolically, this card reversed can be about stepping away from unnecessary battles, not needing to win every interaction, not needing the last word, not needing to prove yourself just because you could, and I think that may be the quality he notices in you. You don't seem desperate to be chosen. That's different. You can enjoy somebody's attention without immediately rearranging yourself to keep it. You can like someone and still have your own plans. You can be warm, interested, even flirtatious, and there's still this feeling of, but I'm paying attention to how you treat me. And that can be intimidating, because there's a big difference between a woman who has options and a woman who genuinely seems capable of walking away from something that does not feel right. I think he senses the second one, and you may hear that and think, are you kidding? I overthink everything. Maybe you do. Maybe you have insecurities he would never guess exist. Maybe after an interaction you go home and replay something you said. But insecurity on the inside does not always look like insecurity from the outside. He may see you calmly leaving a conversation instead of chasing it. He may notice that when somebody gives you a compliment, you appreciate it, but you don't suddenly become a different person. Or maybe he's watched you say no to something very casually. No huge speech, no apology tour. Just, no. That doesn't work for me. And psychologically, that tells him something. It tells him that being attracted to him would not automatically make you abandon your standards. So when he thinks, she's out of my league, I don't necessarily think he means, she could find a better looking man. I think it may be more uncomfortable than that. It's, what if she can tell when I'm not being real? What if you notice the performance? What if you can tell when confidence is actually nervousness? What if charm does not distract you from inconsistency? That's why this gets deeper than beauty, because beauty might make somebody want to impress you, but discernment makes somebody wonder whether they actually can, and here is where this gets almost ironic. Because while he's over there wondering whether he measures up to what you would want, I don't think he's convinced you even know how affected he is. Actually, I think he may be watching you for evidence now. Not evidence that you think he's attractive, evidence that you like him. And I'm not sure he knows the answer. And then you give me the Hanged Man reversed. Okay. Now this is where the uncertainty starts making sense, because symbolically, the Hanged Man is about suspension, waiting. Looking at something from every possible angle before deciding what it means. Reversed, I almost feel like he is getting tired of trying to figure you out. Not tired of you, tired of not knowing. Because you may be incredibly difficult for him to read. Maybe you hold eye contact with him and then just continue with your day. Maybe you laugh at something he says, but you're naturally warm. So then he watches you laughing with somebody else and thinks, okay, maybe she's just like that. You remember something he told you 3 weeks ago? He notices, but then you don't chase the conversation afterward. So now he's thinking, was that interest? Or does she just have a good memory? This man may be conducting an entire internal investigation over one smile while you're literally just trying to get through your afternoon. And that's almost funny. But psychologically, it matters. Because remember those tiny details he has been watching? I think some of that observation has shifted. At first, he was watching because he liked looking at you. Now he's watching because he's trying to understand you. Did she look at me differently just then? Was that pause intentional? Why did she remember that? Does she act this comfortable around everybody? And strangely, your comfort may confuse him more than nervousness would. Because if you were obviously flustered around him, he could tell himself, okay, there's something here. But if you're calm, if you're friendly, if you can have a really good conversation with him and then walk away without looking back 5 times. Now he has no idea. And I don't think this is only about protecting his ego. A casual rejection would be uncomfortable. Fine. You recover. But when you actually admire somebody, rejection feels different because you're not just revealing attraction, you're revealing that they matter to you. And I think that's what he's protecting. But wait, because something changed recently. There was a moment, and I don't think it was huge, where you did something slightly different. Maybe your eye contact lasted longer, maybe your voice softened. Maybe you remembered something personal and brought it up when he wasn't expecting you to. Maybe there was a pause between the two of you that neither person immediately filled. Whatever it was, it interrupted this entire hanged man pattern of analysing, waiting, questioning. Because for 1 second he stopped thinking, I'm probably imagining this, and thought, wait, maybe she does feel this too. And I'm telling you, he has replayed that moment more than once. And then you give me the Seven of Pentacles reversed. Okay, that tells me why this one moment is bothering him so much. Because symbolically, the Seven of Pentacles is about waiting and wondering whether something you've invested energy into is actually going anywhere. Reversed? There's impatience. That feeling of, how long am I supposed to sit here and think about this? And I feel like that moment with you gave him just enough hope to make waiting harder. For some of you, it really was eye contact. Nothing dramatic. You looked at him, he looked at you, and neither one of you immediately looked away. Maybe it lasted half a second longer than normal. But he noticed. For others, you remembered something ridiculously small he told you. Something he mentioned once. And when you brought it up later, there was this little internal reaction of, wait, she remembers that. Or maybe the two of you had a conversation that suddenly became more personal than usual. Not a confession. Just one of those moments where the energy changes and you realise, oh, we're actually talking now. And here's what he keeps replaying, not necessarily the words. Your face. How you looked at him when you said it. Whether your smile meant something. Why there was that pause afterward. Whether you felt the shift too, or whether he created an entire story in his head from 5 seconds of interaction. That's where this Seven of Pentacles reversed becomes interesting. Because before that moment, he could wait. He could observe you. He could tell himself, I don't know what this is yet, but hope changes everything. Because now he has something to lose. And I think he's realising something else that surprises him. He doesn't only want you to find him attractive. That would actually be simpler. He wants you to get him. He wants you to understand what he means when he says something badly. He wants you to notice when he's joking, because he's nervous. He wants to know whether the version of him underneath all that confidence is somebody you would still choose. And that is why he becomes speechless. Because how do you fit attraction, respect, curiosity, nervousness, and actual vulnerability into a normal conversation? You don't. So instead he says something completely ordinary while internally having 17 different thoughts. But now there's another problem. Because the longer he waits, the more aware he becomes that he is not the only person capable of noticing you. And I think that realization scares him more than rejection does. Because somewhere in his mind there's this thought, what if I wait too long and somebody else sees exactly what I saw? And then you give me the Knight of Wands reversed. Yeah, because this is where wanting to move and being afraid to move start fighting each other. Symbolically, the Knight of Wands is usually action, momentum. Somebody sees what they want and goes toward it. Reversed, all that energy is still there, but suddenly it has nowhere clean to go. And I think he's becoming increasingly aware that you are not just standing still waiting for him to figure himself out. You have a life. You have choices. Other people can talk to you. Other people can make you laugh. And I'm not getting this as some possessive, nobody else can look at her thing. No, it's more uncomfortable than that. It's him realising, oh, somebody else could notice what I noticed. Maybe he sees someone compliment you and suddenly he's paying attention. Maybe another person gets that relaxed laugh from you. Or you're talking to somebody and you look completely comfortable, and he catches himself wondering, does she like him? And then probably gets annoyed with himself for wondering. Because technically, you haven't promised him anything. That's the point. And I think that reality is forcing a question he has been able to avoid until now. Am I actually going to do something about this? or am I just going to keep watching? Because hesitation feels safe when you believe you have unlimited time. But the second you realize you might miss the opportunity, waiting does not feel nearly as safe anymore. And this Knight of Wands reversed also makes me think about how he normally protects himself emotionally. Maybe he jokes when things get too serious, maybe he stays busy, maybe he overthinks until the moment passes, maybe he keeps connections casual because casual means nobody gets enough access to genuinely affect him, or maybe he's very good at appearing detached. But you are messing with that system. Because humour doesn't make the feeling disappear. Distance doesn't stop him from noticing you. Overthinking clearly has not solved anything, and pretending this is only physical attraction stopped working several cards ago. That's why this feels like a threshold. He can keep protecting himself from rejection, absolutely. But now he has to admit that protecting himself from rejection might also protect him from ever finding out what this could be. And I think he is beginning to realise something that changes the entire direction of this connection. Because when he first noticed you, he wanted your attention. Then he wanted to know if you liked him. But now? I think what he actually wants from you is becoming much more serious than he expected. And that is the part I don't think even he was prepared for. And then you give me the Queen of Wands. Okay, now I understand why this got more serious. Because symbolically, the Queen of Wands is magnetic, yes. She's attractive. She has presence. People notice when she walks into a room. But she's also somebody with a life. There's warmth here. Independence. Personality. That feeling of being fully yourself without constantly asking permission for it. And I think that is what changed this for him. At first, he wanted your attention. Now I think he's imagining what it would actually feel like to have your presency in his life. Those are two completely different things. Because this has moved beyond, I want her to look at me. It's becoming, what would it be like to talk to her after a terrible day? What is she like when she's tired and nobody is dressed up? Would she get along with the people I care about? What would it feel like if seeing her became normal? And that last one feels important, because remember the star at the beginning. At first you were something he noticed almost from a distance. Bright, beautiful, hard to ignore, but you cannot build closeness with an image. Eventually you have to meet the actual person underneath it. And I think that is what he wants now. Not just the woman who looks incredible when she walks into the room, the woman who complains about something ridiculous, the woman who has bad days, the woman who gets excited and talks too fast, the woman who has routines, preferences, moods, responsibilities. He wants access to the real version. And I'm not saying this means he has secretly planned a wedding in his head. That's not what I mean. But psychologically, this is where somebody starts imagining consistency. Plans, showing up, being included. Maybe even being the person you call when something happens because you trust him to be there. And honestly, that may be the part that scares him most. Because once he realizes he wants something meaningful, another question appears. Am I actually ready to be the kind of man she would need me to be? Not can I get her, can I show up, can I be consistent? Can I stop hiding behind charm, hesitation, or timing? And suddenly his silence makes complete sense. Because he's not speechless, because there's nothing to say. He's speechless because there is too much to say, and saying any of it would reveal how far this has gone for him. And if you remove the fear, the timing, the overthinking, and gave this man 60 seconds to tell you what he actually means, I think what would come out of his mouth would surprise you. And then you give me the Five of Pentacles reversed. Okay? That actually feels like the perfect card to end this on, because symbolically, the Five of Pentacles can be about feeling shut out, feeling like something you want is just on the other side of the door. Reversed, there's this possibility of finally realising the door may not be as closed as you thought, and I think if he had those 60 seconds, without worrying about how he sounded, he would want you to understand something very simple. Yes, he thinks you're beautiful. Obviously, that was the first thing. But somewhere along the way, that stopped being the most important thing. Because now it's the little stuff. The expression you make when you're trying not to laugh. The way you react when you're genuinely interested in something. That moment between the two of you that he has probably analysed far more than you realise. The fact that he gets weirdly careful with his words because your opinion actually matters to him. And I think if he could explain the silence, it would sound less like, I don't know what to say, and more like, I don't want to say something meaningless. That is the difference. Because when someone is only attracted to you, saying the wrong thing is embarrassing. When someone actually values you, saying the wrong thing feels like risking something. And that brings me all the way back to the star. At the beginning, you were this beautiful thing he noticed. Bright, visible, impossible not to look at. But now he has seen enough of the person underneath that image that he doesn't only want to admire you from a distance. He wants to know whether there's actually room for him beside you. And maybe that's why this Five of Pentacles reversed feels so interesting here. It's not a promise. It's not me telling you what somebody is definitely going to do. Symbolically, it's that moment where somebody who has been standing outside emotionally starts wondering, what if I don't have to stay out here, but I want to leave you with something too? His attraction does not make you beautiful. His attention does not create your value. If anything, the interesting part of this entire reading is that some of the qualities affecting him the most are probably things you barely think about. Your mannerisms, your standards, your mind, the way you treat people. The version of you that appears when you forget anyone is watching. That woman was already there before he noticed her. He just happened to look closely enough to see her. And maybe the real question now isn't whether he thinks you're beautiful. I think we answered that. The question is whether he's going to find the courage to finally let you see just how much more than beautiful you have become to him.